What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some highlights from yesterday's Summer Game Fest Showcase 2026 as we kick off this year's salvo of mid-year shows showing us what we've got to expect in terms of gaming releases over the next roughly year or so. And happy to report that the Summer Games Fest, at least, was a pretty fun time. Now this, in combination with State of Play, have already happened. We've got a couple more to go. Xbox's big showcase is on Sunday, or tomorrow. And so we're hardly done talking about this stuff just yet, but we still got a lot of good reveals and interesting information in this particular show, and obviously that's what we are here to go over. But as always, a quick little reminder, I'm mostly focused on the things that are relevant to this channel that I found interesting and will make some effort to decide at least whether or not to review them. There are things I'm not going to mention here. If you want to mention them yourself, by all means, feel free to do so down in the comment section below. But otherwise, let's go ahead and dive fully into this and just get it on with. So, first up, we had a look at the Resident Evil Code Veronica remake that is supposed to be releasing in 2027. Now, I'll be real with you guys, I'm not super familiar with all of the Resident Evil games. I've played a handful of them, and I've been getting more into survival horror, so this is interesting on that level, but I'm mostly curious to see about when I want to jump into covering that franchise. It's not going to be soon, just as a heads up, but it's on my mind, and I'm at least thinking of how to approach that. But it looks like, much in the tune of the other Resident Evil remakes, this is just aiming to make an older one a little more playable for people, and we will see what happens there in 2027, I imagine. Next up, there was Alien Isolation 2. I didn't see a release date or anything like that associated with this one, but Alien Isolation itself was a really big deal when it released. A lot of love for its systems and tech around how the alien moved around. And it's no surprise really that they wanted to carry that forward, and Alien Isolation 2 is going to do so with like a new setting and story and everything. Curious to see how they iterate upon that formula and if they can make it as engrossing as the original already was. Following on from that, we got the proper announcement for Jin Atlas. This is from the makers of things like Shadow of the Colossus, this time centering around weird, gigantic robots. But truth be told, there's really just not too much more information to share on this one besides that. Like I said, didn't see release date or anything, so other than general vibes, I guess we'll wait and see how it pans out. Right after that, we had the announcement of Blood Message, which is a narrative-driven action-adventure game from a studio under NetEase, and will be taking control of a messenger and his accompanying son, actually, as they are trying to journey eastward to deliver a message that relates to the war that is going on in the country that you'll have to navigate your way around at the same time. Overall, I would say it looks pretty, but a game like this is probably going to come down to the quality of its story more than anything else, so we'll see if it manages to live up to all of that. No release date or anything to go along with it, so again, we're just kind of waiting for info for that particular one. Then we had the very bizarre reveal for Stranger Than Heaven, which is a game we already knew was coming, but it is apparently going to be releasing in early 2027, and it's going to feature the likes of Snoop Dogg and the likeness of Tupac as an example, and that's strange because the time period there doesn't really match up or make a ton of sense, so why they would be in the game is of note, I guess. Other than that, to give you a little background on the story setup that it looks like they are going to be pushing home there. However, curious to see what the narrative logic there is, I guess. But we still have plenty of games yet to cover, because next up we're talking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin, which seems to be a big AAA project from Platinum Games, of course focused on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, judging by the title and what I can sort of research here, I would assume this is going to follow along the basic storyline of the comic book miniseries of the same name, but I guess time will tell how truly it holds to that. But either way, the announcement itself looked pretty cool, and I'll be holding out for more information on this one myself. Next up, we had another trailer and gameplay reveal for Control Resonant, which we already knew was out in September, actually, so not too much longer to go on that one, which is, I would say, the main information, really. But again, there was more like gameplay elements and stuff shown off in the trailer that they dropped here, but mostly it's just marketing up until release, as you would expect. And so, to keep it moving, we're going to follow that up with the announcement of Guild Wars 3. Now, this was of interest to me because I used to play and enjoy Guild Wars 2 a lot. In fact, I'm pretty sure you could find some old videos about it on the channel if you looked hard enough. Back when I was playing MMOs, which I don't really do anymore, so I just kind of wanted to mention it for nostalgia's sake, but this was just an announcement trailer, didn't really see much in the way of like gameplay or any information beyond that it was coming eventually. Right after that, we got the announcement of a DLC for Mafia Old Country coming out August 14th. This is interesting, but not really surprising in the sense that Mafia, the Old Country's big problem really was that the content was just not quite there, and you could tell that they had plans for the free ride mode that just seemed to have never come to fruition, but they have updated it since, and I covered some of that. And this DLC is meant to flesh that out a little more. It's going to add 2 new story chapters to the main story, so we'll see how it pans out. I'll probably wind up reviewing this one individually as a DLC, so there's that to look forward to. The next title is an interesting atmospheric game at the very least called 1666 Amsterdam, which is from a developer behind the Assassin's Creed games actually, but it's apparently going to be launching into early access on PC a little later this year, and there's actually a demo out for it now that I'll probably wind up covering in a few days just to take a look at it. But the gist of it is that you are playing a woman who is in fact a witch, and your job is to track down these targets who are referred to as the originals, who are apparently a bit behind on their debt payments because your job is in fact to take the power that they have back from them. I imagine that will make a little more sense when I wind up playing through the demo for myself, but looks interesting enough. Then we got a quick look at Lords of the Fallen 2, which, visually is looking pretty good. We'll see what happens with it, I suppose, but I will say with Lords of the Fallen, the sort of reboot they did, they wound up patching and changing that game so many times that while Lords of the Fallen 2 is probably still a ways off, I'm almost a little hesitant to play it on release, because if it's anything like that initial title, they just kept changing things over and over again, which got kind of frustrating from like a cohesive standpoint, but we'll see what ultimately happens with it, I guess. Now, an exciting one for me personally, we got a look at some gameplay for Star Wars Zero Company. Star Wars Zero Company is a TRPG in the vein of something like XCOM, but Star Wars. And we also got a release date for it, August 27th. Not too much longer to go for that one at all, which is exciting news because they've been a little light on news. In fact, this is like the first bit of real gameplay we've seen, and even then it was a little bit light. But either way, I'm very excited for this one. I'm hoping it's good, and we'll see what happens. Following on from that, we've got The Blood of Dawnwalker with an odd new trailer for sure, but this one is also getting a September release, early September, so it's coming pretty soon, and they are ramping up marketing for it, and this trailer showed off, I guess, plans for a sequel already. So Blood of the Dawnwalker takes place, I think it's 14th century, whereas this trailer is actually modern day stuff that shows Cohen still around and sets up a larger universe beyond the initial game, I would guess, which seems like a bold move a couple months before the release of the game that you hope goes well, but as with everything, I guess we'll wind up seeing what happens. Looking forward to the game itself, if nothing else, however. Then we've got Monster Hunter Wilds. This got an expansion announcement known as Ascendance, which is apparently coming in 2027 as well. Honestly, I didn't play a ton of Wilds, but I had such a great time with the opening hours of that game that it has remained very memorable for me, so I wanted to give it a shout out, I guess. In slightly smaller news, I suppose, Palworld is finally hitting its 1.0 version on July 10th, and if you remember, that game has actually been in early access for quite some time, so there is that. And then coming up on the end here, next up we've got The Wolf Among Us 2 is giving a release date for 2027, but truth be told, that's not the first time we've heard something like that, as The Wolf Among Us 2 has had an impressively harried development cycle. It's almost a little too much just to go through and explain all of it, to be honest, so I'm not going to. With that in mind, however, if everything goes well, this should be releasing in 2027, but as mentioned, it's had problems in the past, and frankly, we'll see what happens. I'll believe it when I see it, more or less. Second to last, we then got the announcement of a sequel to Stellar Blade known as Blood Rain, which isn't terribly surprising. That game got a lot of attention when it initially released, and I've gotta say, the most striking thing to me about this trailer was actually kind of just how silly the trailer for it was, because the main character here is supposed to be on some clandestine mission to track these people through this busy area, and she apparently does that by having the most main character outfit possible while also walking directly in front of people. But that obviously wasn't the focus of the trailer, and like I said, we'll see what happens. I never got around to playing the first one, so maybe I'll make an effort if it looks like that's going to be interesting. And then last but not least, we got the long-awaited reveal for Final Fantasy VII Revelation, the final part in the trilogy of remakes that they've been doing for the original Final Fantasy DLC 7, which came with all sorts of information, a focus on some of the upcoming gameplay elements, like they show you parachuting out of the high wind at one point, which I thought was a neat touch. But more than anything, we can expect this game in spring of 2027, which it'll be nice to finally see how they decide to wrap up that sort of alternate history version. But speaking of wrapping things up, that is pretty much going to do it for this particular video. There's been some highlights for the Summer Games Showcase. Certainly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe. I'll probably be reviewing at least a handful of these, so reason enough to stick around there, I suppose. But we still have more shows to cover, and you can expect some more of this in the near future, in the next couple of days. But otherwise, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.